Hello and welcome to Office Hours, the live version of the facility. Many new new viewers this time. It's live. Welcome to the live version of the facility where I take all your comments, questions, and I try to apply my own smattering of sciencey and intelligency funness to it. And of course, we talk. Sorry, my brain's a little frazzled, and we'll talk about that in a second. But we also talk about a number of segments. All right, you know what? So it should be said right at the top, so I can kind of clear my head here. Obviously, Grant Imahara left us yesterday, and I considered him a friend. I do consider him a friend, and my partner was very close friends with him and was for a number of years. She still works at the same shop, so she'd see him every day. He was one of the kindest, most gracious people I've ever met. Whenever I ran into him, he was always doing something for someone else, like making a Baby Yoda for kids in the hospital to see and get excited about. I even approached him because, I'm the way my brain works was like, oh, we should do a video and get, more views on this big effort you're doing. And he's like, no, it's just for the kids. That's fine. And so to have him go so young and so suddenly, it's obviously a tragedy. And my heart goes out to his family and all of his friends. At least yesterday, after everyone got the news, about 40 of us, from, Adam Savage to his old friends at ILM to friends he knows now, we were all on a Zoom call, talking with each other, sharing stories, screen sharing, showing old pictures of Grant and crying. So there can't be any traditional service because of this goddamn thing we're going through that America's making worse. But we did get to share our thoughts and feelings, and that was really nice. And I said it then, I said it on Twitter and stuff, but most of us would be very lucky to be remembered in an overwhelmingly 100% positive way by everyone, and to have such an impact, and an impact on millions. So this stream is dedicated to Grant. And that being said, given that I'm kind of frazzled today, I do have my security team in the chat, and do not mess with me today. I will ban you everywhere for life. Anyway, this stream's for Grant. So now what I have to do as a performer is I have to flip the switch now, which sometimes feels kind of disingenuous, but it's not. I just want to make this watchable. So watch this. Here we go. I'm gonna push that down. Hello and welcome to Office Hours, the live version of the facility where I, good old Professor Kyle, take all of your comments, questions, corrections, comments about my hair and face and how glorious they are. And we also talk about a number of segments throughout the show, a little sciencey things throughout the week that we can get to. Today is no different. Of course, we already mentioned something horrific at the top of the show, so let's move right along. We are going to be talking about a Roby that does science 1,000 times faster than the average stupid person. Well, scientists aren't stupid. You know what I mean. We'll also be talking about fingies and just how good they are at touching, because sometimes you remember something that's interesting about fingies and you want to tell the world about it. Does that never happen to you? We will also... Sorry, I was getting a phone call. We'll also be talking about... we need to keep talking about this because some of you out there are still not doing your part, so we'll be talking a little bit about the pandemic again. We'll also be taking one of your comments from the most recent episode of the facility, which was how a black hole looks in a mirror, which I thought was fascinating. if I do say so myself. And then finally, I'm going to be highlighting a creator more on the programming side, computer programming side, who did something really, really fun with one of the best games of all time, Super Mario 64, and we'll get to that. At the time of this recording, he only has 300 views on this video, and you better change that if you like it. But before we get to that, I want to say, of course, chat is open. Please don't spam the chat. Security will nuke you from orbit. Super chat is also active, so if you want to throw money at my face and simp for science, you can do that. I will try to get to as many super chats as possible, but if I do not get to it, I apologize. There's a lot of you in here. So, with that, let's get to our very first topic. Look at this Roby. Now that's a good robot. So I saw this story and it was interesting because so the university was looking into this, of course, but especially important now during lockdown when scientists can't be in the lab and together and doing experiments and stuff. So for the last couple of years, they've been working on this robot, and it's less the robot itself. These components already existed and were sold by this company that I don't want to say it out loud because I feel like I'm going to make it sound gross. Anyway, this company provided this robot and this arm, but what the university did was work for years on a program that could automate certain experiments in a science lab. Trying to find the best chemical composition that reacted with oxygen or something like that. They did something like that. So what the real cool thing was here is they basically made the entire lab a program, which is to say they use LiDAR, so like radar, but with light. So they used LiDAR and they programmed in every single spot in the lab, and there's also spots on the floor that the robot can identify, but so the robot has a representation, a three-dimensional representation of space. I don't know if it's three-dimensional. It's probably two-dimensional. Anyway, it has a representation of space in its little Roby brain, and it uses that to go around the lab and do little sciencey stuff, as you will see right now. So this is obviously a time lapse. It's not that fast. That would be terrifying if it was that fast. Robots like that are coming, though. Oh, they're coming. Anyway, imagine a robot so quick, it's so deadly that you could only see it with like a strobe light. It's going to happen. Anyway, you can tell where my head's at. You can see just how quick and efficient this robot can be. Now, a robot like this can't do everything. It's only going to be tackling very repetitive experiments and such. And because of that, the repetitiveness is what it's taking advantage of. So I read in the article and in the research that, this robot can do stuff that a scientist wouldn't even ask another scientist to do because it's too time consuming and would be too much of a money sink, even though this robot is $150,000. So there's a cost benefit there. But this robot can work 22 hours a day with only 2 hours left for charging, and it can work in the middle of the night as well without any lights being on because it's using LiDAR. It's shooting out light, seeing how far it is away from a surface or not, and then go and continue to do the science thing. So if you add up all of those benefits, it is 1,000 times faster at the same task than a human would be, and you wouldn't even ask a human to do this. And this is the real appeal of scientific robots. This also applies to space travel and space exploration. I don't know why I did that. But there's a robot versus human argument for going to Mars, for example, where a human, and this is the opposite side of it, but a human could go to Mars and do experiments 1,000 times faster than a robot on a light delay, but it's a lot more expensive and a lot more dangerous. This is the opposite side of that, where we could use a robot to do highly repetitive things that you wouldn't even ask a scientist to do, and it can do it 22 hours out of the day, effectively 1,000 times faster than any puny human. So this robot is very cool, and if you were worried about scientists, if you were worried about robots coming from your jobs, automation. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Automation is going to wipe away like 30% of work. But that's fine. There'll be new jobs that need human fingies. But for scientific jobs like this one, I would, to be honest, I wouldn't mind working in a lab with a little robot because I put little googly eyes on the end of the arm there. And, I just sit there occasionally, sipping from my invisible mug and just be like, look at him go. Look at it go. I don't know why I gender it. It's just what you say. Let's go to the chat. Work! Little bit flustered today. I saw we had a number of super chats. I thank you for that. Of course, they're all gone now. But thank you. Crin Firelight says, can someone give Kyle a hug for me since I want to stay on my side of the screen and avoid anyone else? No, don't touch me. It's fine. And wear a mask. Veildark, Terror of the Peaks, says, this robot seems valuable for doing... Oh, I lost you. This robot seems valuable for doing things like filling petri dishes and stuff like that. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. This isn't seeking to do the really hard science where you need some kind of human mind there present directing stuff. It is doing more of like, oh, I need you to fill 1,000 vials with this reagent or whatever. We have 10 from When Geeks Craft. Just thank you. That's all. Godspeed, friend. What is the speed of God? I mean, I know it comes from, like, Greek, right? But what would the speed of God be? I'm assuming fast. Anyway. CJ Rainbolt with the 9 says, stream on my birthday? I think yes. I'm simping for science. It's the only way to celebrate. We love you, Kyle, and the whole community is here for you. Thank you, CJ, and happy birthday, CJ. Oh, Rainbolt is an awesome last name. Don't ever lose it. How would you? Am I even here? Is anyone? Christian with the 10 says, this robot reminds me of Tony Stark's dummy. Yeah. Would a hypothetical evil villain be intimidated by this genius robot or have it as their number 2? Well, again, the problem here is that this robot isn't even it's not even semi-intelligent. It doesn't have even what we call narrow intelligence, something like Siri has. Hey Siri, play Yakety Sax. It doesn't have anything like that. So I wouldn't have it if I were a supervillain, which I'm not. It would not be my number 2. That would be my cat Chonquita. Because she would disarm my enemies with her cuteness, and that's when I strike. Joshua Barbu, whose name I always get wrong and always donates, with the 25. Grant did amazing things for science communication, and he played a great Hikaru Sulu in Star Trek Continues. He will be missed. Not even going to ask about D&D today. Be well. Well, you did, kinda, didn't you? It's fine. Thank you for the 25. We have a 50 from Daxus, who says, goodbye, Grant. You inspired many. As I said, we could only be so lucky if we inspire as many people in our lives as Grant did. And the good thing is that he will live on. The Rushanek, you're Russian, says, you're awesome. You should look at the robot the way... You should look at the robot that does prostate surgeries. Should I? I'll check it out. Thank you, right. Rushanek. Jonathan Young with the 50 says, hey Kyle, love the show. I wanted to thank you for the last week's office hours in particular. I learned that I too have aphantasia and never knew. Turns out I live in a void of sorts myself. Yeah, so it's complicated. It's a complicated thing in that when I discovered that my friend had aphantasia, a lack of interior vision, being unable to picture things in the mind, that friend wasn't necessarily happy about that. She kind of was distressed by it. So I hope that you weren't distressed by it. But aphantasia is one of those very weird neurological things where you grow up with it and you never think about talking about it with somebody because you just assume that's how everyone is. It's normal. Why would you ask that question? And so many people, I suspect so many people go their entire lives without ever knowing that they have it. So I hope it wasn't distressing, and I hope that it helped you learn a little bit more about yourself and the condition. There's similar conditions like prosopagnosia, not being able to recognize faces, where people can go their entire lives without realizing, oh, I can't differentiate. There's actually a test for prosopagnosia, for face blindness, that they do, and it's interesting, where because people go their entire lives assuming this is how the brain works, they don't ask the question. But to test this, you put two people next to each other in the exact same clothes, and presumably they have this, a similar hairdo, but in the exact same clothes, and then you ask this person, do you know who is who? And one of these people could be like their brother or their father or their sister or their mother. Some of them realize, whoa, unless someone speaks, I can't tell who is who. And they suddenly realize they've been cataloging who people are and what they look like based almost solely on their patterns of dress and not their faces. It's a really bizarre thing. And the human mind is limitless in its capacity to get weird, baby. You can quote me on that. 10 from Happy, who says, if the universe is only 4 billion years old, and if a star's lifespan is around 10 billion years old, where did black hole Sagittarius A come from when it has existed for 13.2 billion years? Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, you can black holes can form in a couple of ways. Dying, most common way, dying star that is so heavy that it doesn't collapse in a neutron star, collapses even further into this thing that's not really a thing that we call a black hole. And this death doesn't have to be after a complete lifetime of a star. So you could have a star dying well before its lifetime. Consider a rogue star flying through the universe. It encounters on its path another star. Because the two masses of the star are so much, them gravitationally interacting, them collapsing in onto each other could cause a black hole to form. Or two stars in a binary system, one gets too close and it starts siphoning off material from the other, like materials going down the drain, and that could cause a black hole to form. We know that happens. So you could have a black hole forming before a star has lived its entire life. It's a stellar jungle out there, I suppose. Not so much like nature, but how many animals die of old age? Presumably the minority. Most of them are eaten or something befalls them. I assume that happens in the universe with so many stars with some regularity. The regularity, I have no idea. Let's go on. Let's stop the super chats for a second. And let's go on to our second topic. I forget what it is. Let's find out together. That's a finger. Very, very close up. That might make you uncomfortable. I don't care. Look at it. If you look close enough, that's not mine. So you can't unlock my MacBook. But if you look close enough, see those little holes, little dots? That's where the sweat comes out. I should have loaded up a video because it is weird to see sweat coming out of little holes in your hand. I think for whatever reason, our intuitive biology on this is that sweat just happens, just appears on our hands. Well, it has to come out of something. Tiny holes. Anyway. So I was thinking about fingers, as you do, and how sensitive are you? When you think about your senses on your very veiny hands, how sensitive are you to touch? I've talked about super sensing things before on Because Science, specifically like spiders. Spiders are incredibly sensitive. Their spider sense, quote unquote, they might have some of the most sensitive biological detectors, period, where in theory, their hairs on their body could detect Brownian motion, which is to say just random thermally driven movement of atoms. That's nuts. Think if you could feel air when it's not moving. That's crazy. Now, spiders probably don't feel air when it's not moving because they have probably some kind of gating where they don't sense everything that they possibly could sense. Anyway, so spiders are very sensitive. They cry a lot. But how sensitive are you? I think you know how sensitive your body can be and your sensitivity to touch. You know, you can just take a pen or a pencil and touch on different parts of your body. Why do I have it uncapped? Why am I drawing on myself? And you'll notice that certain parts of your body are more sensitive to others than others. So you could take two pencils, and this is a test of sensitivity on your own skin. You could take two pencils and place them, don't look, and place them close together. Now, in certain parts of your body, you'll be able to tell if something is closer or farther apart with more accuracy. So say on the bottom, like in the small of your back or on your shoulders, you might not be able to tell how far apart or guess how far apart things are, but on the back of your hand, which is much more sensitive an area, you might be able to. And aside from your lips, ooh, don't gift that. Aside from your lips, your fingertips are extremely sensitive. One of the most sensitive parts in your body. How sensitive is it, Kyle? Just get to the point. Leave me alone. Well, you can test that kind of thing. And when we do test that kind of thing, you get a picture like this. And I'll give you a second to look at the numbers here. If you're not familiar, that's a millimeter. That is the unit micrometer or micrometer if you want to sound like a real. And up above my beautiful hair is nanometer. So what scientists doing this study, where this figure came from, what they discovered is that the human fingertip can detect differences in the surface of something down to nanometers, a billionth of a meter. That's insane. That is detecting differences in texture that you can't physically see. And I believe this is also, this might be getting close to the limit. This might be getting close to the limit where you can't even see it with an optical microscope, where it's down to like wavelength of light. No, it is. What is red light? 500 nanometers? So, I mean, we are talking about extremely small. And your fingertips are so sensitive that if you had two surfaces, one with this and one without it, you would be able to tell which one, even though you couldn't see it. So your fingies are extremely sensitivo. And that's all I have to say about that. Let's go back to the chat. Yes, I do have a cut on my arm. It's from a cat. We were getting too rowdy. And she has all of her claws, and I refuse to cut them because I'm lazy. We have the 5 from Siopolis, who says, how small or large would a black hole have to be to destroy our planet and or our solar system? No idea. I don't know. But, redirect. For example, like the mini black holes, micro black holes that were theorized to maybe arise at like the Large Hadron Collider as a result of atom smashing, those would be so small that they would immediately evaporate, or on time, a fast time scale evaporate. So it's probably not ultra small, but I don't know. The size of a basketball? Maybe I'll do an episode on it. That's good. VCDRNY with the 20 says, thank you, Kyle, for what you do. On another subject, I've heard you about the Sapphire Project, the Electric Universe. I heard it's just pseudoscience. I wonder if you know anything about it. Yeah, so when you hear the Electric Universe and other things like that are... where's my brain? There it is. they're united by this idea that, like, and this is usually how it goes, and I am generalizing here, but it's usually one guy who didn't take any physics, who comes up with an idea that he thinks is correct about how the entirety of the universe works, and he's guessing because he doesn't work in a lab or anything like that. So a lot of these, you know, I put quotes around ideas. I mean, they're not even really theories, because they don't, theory in the scientific sense accounts for evidence that we see in a logical and testable way. And stuff like the electric universe, or, crystal energy or vibration, we're all just vibrations, man. No, prove it. And I think they fall into a trap of, and I don't blame them for this, but the people who create these ideas, they have some insight and they get excited about it because they think they could make a real difference in science or philosophy or whatever. And I get that you're excited. I would be too if I thought I figured out the universe. But check yourself before you mentally wreck yourself, and a lot of these people end up pretty mentally wrecked in my estimation. By doing your due diligence, go out and search for, well, has anyone had ideas like this? Are there any better explanations for what I'm seeing? And then confirmation bias kicks in. They refuse to put their pet theory to bed. But as Feynman said, if your best theory doesn't fit with experiment, it's wrong. All there is to it. So if any of these people who advocate for these different views of the universe, if anyone can prove they're onto something, then you can take them seriously. But until you start applying that actual rigor to your own work, I see no real reason to pay attention to you. And I know that sounds callous, but when you approach a physicist and you say, "Hey, you're wrong about everything," like, back it up, man. I went to school for 7 years for this. like, how dare you? Like, you're disrespecting me and my life's work by saying that I know nothing and you know everything with zero experience. Back it up. I challenge you. What's his name? I challenge you, I forgot his name. Good. What's his name? Guy with the glasses? I don't care. Let's forget about him. His ideas are bad. Master of All, frequent donator with the 5, who says, "Hey Kyle, what are your thoughts on the ethics of colonizing extraterrestrial objects? I've got an assignment on it and I want your opinion." Oh, you're going to quote me, huh? All right, here we go. Quote for a real assignment that you will be graded on. On the other hand, science boy Kyle Hill is conflicted. In a recent live stream, he said, quote, "It's very anthrocentric to think that our colonization of a potentially inhabited place, see, now erase that other, and this, and don't quote, I think it's selfish to think that we have priority when colonizing another place. And of course, we've seen this occur between humans, and often following this occurrence, there's a tragedy. Now, we're not talking about the same kind of tragedy here, but if we become a spacefaring civilization, I think a similar tragedy would befall, say, microorganisms on Mars if we didn't be very careful to happen upon a planet and destroy or change irrevocably the entire ecosystem or biosphere. And this is why you see something like the first directive on Star Trek, where they did not think it was ethical to impose your own direction and or will on a species you've never met, or on organisms. So I think the ethics here is really complicated, and it gets more complicated because obviously there has to be some answer if you want to do this. And so then you get down to like, okay, well, what do we value? If we're talking about ethics, we're probably valuing the well-being of conscious creatures. That's just usually how we define it. And so if we wipe out some natural bacteria on Mars, is that bad ethically? I think there could be arguments that say, no, it's quote unquote okay. And then you start going up the scale to like, okay, well, if this thing could be intelligent or could possess some kind of feeling, is it okay to introduce potentially, a lethal pathogen from humans to them? I could see arguments that say it's not. So that's my entirety of the answer to your assignment. And let's go a little low energy today. Anyway, let's go on to our third topic. I also forget what it is. Let's find out together. Okay, Americans, we got to talk about this again. So I was recently in another part of the country, and I was made fun of for wearing a mask, which is insane. In the membrane. Insane. Oh, I'm going to get demonetized. Anyway, it's ridiculous. It's the height of stupidity. And for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, America right now, it has, because of its value, through not really a fault of its own, it's America as a society, holds very high the idea of individual freedom and expressiveness and, a distrust of authority and that kind of stuff. And because of that, when someone tells you to wear a mask, you're going to have some portion of the population that goes, no, And that's unfortunate. In other cultures, a culture like Japan, this doesn't happen. They place a lot of trust in government and institutions, and they will follow recommendations of experts. And so you see in a place like Japan, the cases are dwindling, and not as many people are dying, where in the United States, it's spiking. And I want to make this point again, more forcefully this time, because as I said in a previous episode, the law of large numbers is tripping a lot of people up here. And as early as yesterday, someone on Twitter was arguing with me like, well, 1% of people will die who get it. Why is that bad? Well, yes, 1% is a small number. However, as Franklin points out on Quora? Somewhere. I'm sorry. But made a number of good points, and you can take a look at this. But the important part is that we cannot afford the cost of everybody getting COVID. 1% of the population of America is over 3 million people. Now, 3 million people dying. Again, law of large numbers. We don't think about this. 1% doesn't sound bad, but it's 3 million people. So over the course of a year, this would be the annual death toll doubled. If one cause came around and doubled the death toll, don't give that. But it's not just the deaths. It's not just the deaths. Even if you have just 1% of people dying, if you apply that, as Franklin says, for every one person who dies, statistically, there are 19 more who need to go to the hospital. 18 of those people will have permanent heart damage for the rest of their lives. 10 will have permanent lung damage. 3 will have strokes. 2 will have neurological damage. 2 will have neurological damage that leads to loss of cognitive function. So when 1% of people die, that might not sound bad. But what about 3 million people dead, 62 million hospitalized, 32 million with permanent lung damage, 6 million with permanent loss of cognitive function? What's the deal? The choice is not, to quote Franklin here, the choice is not to ruin the economy to save the 1%. If we reopen the economy, it will be destroyed anyway. The U.S. economy cannot survive everyone getting COVID-19. And I know I sound like a broken record here, but it's in the face of the weirdest time I've ever been alive. And This is the worst year I've been alive. Don't make it worse. And don't make it worse for me. I'm selfish. Let's go back to the chat. What does chat have to say? Usama Lasfer says, it's going to be okay soon. No, it's not. It's... To really get a handle on this disease, we need a vaccine or a treatment that lasts for a while. And even very optimistic estimates of the timeline here is not until early 2021. So there's going to be some seasonality here where the ebb and flow of COVID-19 is going to make it less bad for some stretch of time. But this is going to keep happening. And if in particular, if the United States stays so stupid in regards to, and like literally stupid in regards to what we should be doing, it's going to be this bad every time. And we're not going to get a handle on it until next year. What area was Kyle in when he was made fun of, excuse me, for the mask? I was in the Midwest. Joshua with another 10. My heart breaks when I think of the prospect of humanity reaching for the stars when I can't see all the evidence here at home. When I can see all the evidence here at home that we aren't ethically ready for it. Sorry, Kyle. You know why. Yeah, I do. Thank you. First attempt with the 5. What would be your best guess as to what a fourth dimensional being traveling in said fourth dimension would look like to us? So that's kind of interesting. So there's been a number of popular thought experiments about this. The most popular is Flatland, and it supposes, so think about it this way. So we're three-dimensional beings living in 3 dimensions plus time. What would, let's since it's easier to think about, let's reduce it down 1 dimension. So imagine you are a 2-dimensional being on a 2-dimensional space. And so you're like a square, and you're doing square things, and you're moving around your little flat home, your flatland. One day, as you're leaving your rhombus of a house, you see a circle appear. And then it appears again. You think that's weird. I've never, in my squarey life, I've never seen another person just appear and disappear like that. It's very odd. So the square takes this. I'm making all this up, by the way. I'm just going off the top of my head here. So the square goes to the most respected scientist in town and says, I've been seeing this blinking circle in and out of existence. I have no idea what it is. Do you have any ideas? And the scientist works it over. And they come back with a crazy idea, which is close to your idea that you're talking about. Well, the circle says, or the scientist says, what if this circle was just the quick impression of a higher dimensional being upon our dimension? He says, what? This is, okay, follow me here. Square boy. This is going to be difficult, but imagine a circle, but it was a circle all the way around. It's 3 dimensions now. It's a sphere. If a sphere pressed up against our world, touched it, what would the touch look like? They think about this. The touch would be a circle, the scientist concludes. The impression of a 3-dimensional object on a 2-dimensional space would be a 2-dimensional representation of the surface of that object. Much like the shadow of a sphere is a circle. Also, that's how we know that, one of the ways we know that the Earth is round. Its shadow on the moon is never a flat disk. So that brings us to your question. What would a fourth dimensional being look like? Well, it might look like some three-dimensional object blinking in and out of existence, because the shadow of a fourth dimensional object is a three-dimensional one. And if you ever see something like that, you're either going crazy or going to meet someone really interesting. I felt pretty good about that story. I'm not going to lie. That felt good. Kevin, clip it. Yeah, no, like the last 2 minutes, it sounded really cool. Like Carl Sagan. No, my voice wasn't as cool. You shut up. That guy. Let's go to Wolfgang Hubner with a 10, who says, hey, Kyle, assume that we have to harness energy from space in the near future, like solar satellites or lunar power plants. What would be the safest way to get this energy down to Earth? Well, you'd beam it. It'd be wireless energy, and you'd beam it with something like microwaves, and you would beam it to another place. And this has been thought about quite a bit. If you want to talk more about that, you could talk to, say, OG Super Nerd Matterbeam, who is at ToughSF on Twitter, and they know a lot about transmitting space energy. Let's go to one of our final topics once I get back to the controller of this. Peer review. So, on the last episode of the facility, I asked the question, what would a black hole look like in a mirror? And the answer, weird. But Jordan, in context of this episode, had a good idea, good question. When I said that the more you move... Wait, did I say that in this episode yet? Yeah. When you move differently, you experience time differently. And more specifically, when you move through space, the more you move through space, the more quickly you move through space, the more slowly you move through time. Ooh. So Jordan Stokes asks, this makes me wonder, what is time like for a photon? Well, let's do that thought experiment. We have proven that time dilation is a thing. You can take, for example, an atomic clock, 2 atomic clocks, and you set one on the ground and you put another one in an airplane that has a cruising speed of 550 miles per hour. And if you take that across the country and you see if those clocks are still in sync, they are not. The atomic clock that traveled very quickly for a while experienced not very much, but some time dilation. This also happens... Oh, well, another great example is that because satellites are moving around the planet so quickly, if we didn't account for time dilation, GPS wouldn't work. So we have to correct for time dilation. It's a very known thing. It's proven experimentally and theoretically, so it's not just like a weird physicsy thing, as I'm wont to talk about. But let's extend that. How far does time dilation go? Well, you can go faster, and you get 99.9% the speed of light. What happens when you get that last 0.1%? Well, because it's a limit. It's an asymptotic move towards infinity, where the time dilation becomes so large that it doesn't really make sense to talk about it. It does trend towards infinity, and then you would suppose that time would stop. So a photon doesn't experience time. If you were to move like a photon at light speed, you'd be basically just teleporting from your perspective, because you'd be experiencing time. You'd move at light speed, everything would stop, and then wherever you got to where you're going and slowed back down, it would just be a blink. Things would begin happening for you again. Some amount of time would pass for everyone else. Depends on how long you're moving at light speed. But if you were a photon, you don't experience time, which is weird. But they also don't have mass, and they also don't have brains, and it doesn't really make sense to put yourself in the perspective of a photon, because we cannot travel the speed of light. So to say your perception of time would stop is only the theoreticalness of it. It can't happen. So it doesn't. I hope I answered your question, Jordan. And for that, for making me think about all this weird stuff, you are an honorary professor at the facility. Fantastic. Kevin, did you get the plaque this time? What do you mean? Yeah. Sorry. I gotta take care of one thing. I'm just gonna go on a quick commercial break here. What do you mean they didn't record the VO? What, I'm gonna have to make up the VO for this commercial on the spot? What? Alright, fine. Okay. Yeah. When you need a boost from outer space, try Dark Matter Coffee. Infused with gravitons and the best beans that were recently pooped out by a cervet, Dark Matter Coffee is a heavy blend that's not light on taste. Oh, Kevin, record that one. That one was good. Man, whoever does those commercials are just brilliant. Snapple Mootin with the 5 Canadian dollars. A spicy. Hey Kyle, no offense, but citing data on COVID without questioning the context is wrong. Reopening for people not at risk won't result in those numbers. But it will, though. Because when you're applying 1% to a population, you're applying it to everyone. It's 1% of everyone. So, are you suggesting that we only reopen the parts of business for people under 60? That sounds even harder than what we're doing now in terms of coordination, and America is not really good at coordinating the response at the moment. And 2, or B, more evidence is coming out almost daily that it's not just people over 60 who are at most risk. It's still applying to everyone. And even if it's not 1%, even if it's less than 1%, again, with the law of large numbers, it's still a tremendous problem. So let's say that someone my age, I mean, I'm timeless, but someone theoretically my age, even if my risk was 0.25%, if, 30 million of me go back to work, that's still thousands and thousands of people who are going to die, and thousands more who are going to have problems for the rest of their lives. So because of the ability for this pandemic to affect literally everyone, even if they don't die, that's why we need to be so austere here. And the idea of age gating, opening things up, is obviously not working. And I don't mean to call you out here, but when a bunch of teens go for spring break or whatever, and then they go and they catch the virus, they don't die, they're asymptomatic, then they go back to their homes and they spread it to all the people who are at risk anyway. We are all in this together. We have to be. Herd immunity is not going to work the way that you think it does, because we don't have a vaccine here, and antibodies don't seem like they're lasting for years or anything like that. And it seems like there's evidence that you can get reinfected rather quickly. We have to all do this. I can't stress that enough. And it's not like it's impossible. Other countries are doing it. New Zealand has 1/10 the population. Sure. But they basically handled this. And nobody has died for a couple days. We can do that. What is making it hard is people distrusting authority and having people in power who do not know what they're doing. I would do a better job. And that's... Think about that. Think about me up there on a podium talking to you. That should not be the case. We have Classic Logic with the 10 afternoon, Dr. Hill. I don't think I'll have enough time to go back to school and get a PhD. I want a PhD. It would probably be physics or an engineering. But selfishly, I would love, if you're listening, an honorary doctorate from my alma mater, Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so that I can force people to call me Dr. Hill. Because then I really sound like a supervillain, which I'm not. Snapple Mootin, who we just talked to at length, says, Canadian dollars are great, though. Here's another 5 to make up for the conversion. So you appreciate that. I wasn't calling you out. We're just having a discussion here. Thanks for another 5. Canadian dollars. Ooh, mapley. Most Epic Pants says the Basilisk is watching. The Basilisk is always watching, my man. I think we need to get to our very last segment. Look, I'm holding a pen all the time like Stephen Colbert. Okay, so I think I want to start doing this more often, where I highlight a creator that isn't getting enough views. So I'm going to put this right now in the chat. And then maybe someone could help me. But I'm going to put this right now in the chat. Beep boop. So what this guy does is he mods controllers to do crazy things. And his most recent one was he had an Xbox Kinect that no one uses anymore. But what he did is he wanted to use it in a very fun way. So what he did was hack the system to change the inputs such that when he was tracking, when his body was being tracked, certain actions by his body would control Super Mario 64. One of the best games of all time. And I love watching speedruns of it. So he made it so to punch, you have to actually punch. To jump, you have to actually jump. To duck and jump, and even to butt slam, you have to duck. And as you can imagine, this was incredibly stressful on him. So it took him like 2 hours to get to the first Bowser, and he does actually have to jump. He also didn't think about it, but he has to jump to swim. And so to duck, he has to hit. And this took him so long. And the video's quite well done and well edited. It should have more than 300 views. And tell him the facility sent you. But for the spinning around of Bowser, at the end, he physically had to twirl his body around on a trampoline, which was so hard. And so, and it's not just the gaming portion here. He did go into the technology to rewire what the inputs and outputs were doing, such that he could control a classic game in a wonderfully fresh new way. So I'm highlighting this young man today. This video only has 300 views. Let's make it 5,000 or whatever, because he deserves it. That's a lot of fun, very nerdy work. And if there's one thing at the facility that I support, it's nerdy work. Don't give that. It's at 14,000 views now? Is it? Who said that? Yeah, baby. Well, it was on Reddit, so I saw it. I read it on Reddit, so that probably helped. But let's boost it up even more. That's what I want. Classic Logic says, I literally wasted $10 to ignore my question, for Kyle to ignore my question. I'm pretty sure. Go back and watch the VOD. I'm pretty sure I said your name and said something after that. And I'm also reading it now. Oh, it's infuriating, isn't it? I'm sorry. If you, I'll catch it. I can't catch everything. I'm a man. I'm just a man. Very frazzled man today. Leave me alone. If someone wants to repost the YouTube link so everyone can see it again. Sheepy little B-word says, wait, if you're going at the speed of light and you feel like teleporting, can you even stop if you don't feel time? Bulwick, one of my original professor emeritus at the facility, says with the 5, Dr. Kyle Hill totally sounds not supervillainy. Sounds kind of like, oh, Dr. Heil Kill. Totally not a supervillain name. Sounds like a pharmacist. Hey, I know some cool pharmacists. They get me drugs that I'm prescribed. Oops. Michael Skinner says, if a fourth dimensional car can go anywhere at any time but never arrives, is that an infinity loop? Well, imagine a fourth dimensional thing that was above the dimension of time, then it could time travel. It could just enter and exit. And that's kind of the idea of Interstellar. And also an idea that we're getting to in a upcoming episode. Umarulu says, what would a mirror look like falling into a black hole? I can't make another one. That's just cannibalizing views. Boombox says, are you ever going to be doing a Magic the Gathering Commander episode? I probably won't be doing Magic the Gathering gameplay on this channel. I'd either start a new channel, which I have thought about. But I really like going in with the Command Zone boys. So if you like Commander, you should be watching / listening to the Command Zone. And I'd like to do more gameplay with them because they have their facility, they have a great setup. They have like 10 editors and great cameras, and they use the same microphone. So I'd like to play more with Jimmy and Josh once the lockdown is done. Joaquin Kipche says, hey Kyle, your hair is amazing. I know. Thanks. Juan Maduro has a pregunta who says, Kyle, would it be ethical to mind control people if you could? No. Your sense, your autonomy as a thinking thing is what determines all ethics, right? If you're changing the consciousness of a conscious thing, that's like by definition unethical, I believe, because then you could supersede anyone else's ethics and make them do anything. I think it's the least ethical thing. Maybe. Which makes Kilgrave from Jessica Jones that much more of a dick. Although, man, he really looked good in that suit. And in that accent. And I love him. ARIA wants to leave me for him. She would, too. But Kyle, didn't you program her to love David Tennant? Yes. I program all my robots to love David Tennant, and that is canon. But I haven't really watched Doctor Who. So they really, really like Harry Potter? What the hell else is he in? Who cares? I mean, you can tell I'm a little bit more disjointed today. It's fine. Because CS Dragon, 123456, says, I'm glad I actually watched this live. Yeah, it's been evolving over the course of the last hour into something kind of weird. Rain Heskula says, will you start using background music that doesn't cause anxiety? No. Are you anxious? Don't worry. Are you stressed? Are you stressed? Jeez. I'm losing my mind a little bit. Ooh, that's a Lonely Wolf. I'm not going to tackle that. I won't even touch that with a 20-foot pole. Alex Duenas says, if our galaxies are moving at incredible speeds, how does this interact with time dilation? Well, because we're moving relatively, say, to Andromeda, if there was another creature in Andromeda, say, relatively speaking, they are moving at, well, I believe the stars in Andromeda are moving towards us, relatively speaking, at like 100 kilometers per second, which is very fast, but it's nowhere near relativistic speeds. But because they're moving so quickly, if we could look at some dum-dum in Andromeda, they would look to us as moving more slowly. They would look slowed down in slow motion. If we could see their watch on their hand, it would be ticking slower. And to them, we would look like we were sped up and moving around. Like that. Which is patently ridiculous. And who would ever... Don't gift that. Said that a lot today. So I think that we have a... Let's stop the donos. I'll get to the rest of the super chats, but then we're going to wrap it up here to see if there's any more $10 I can ignore. Just kidding, Logic. Cool Guys Nation, frequent interactor with me in many places. It says 10 with the 10 best wishes for from all your peers at the facility on this sad day. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was last night was pretty damn rough, but we'll get through it. Stefan with the 5 says, what is the reason for an annular versus total solar eclipse? Gonna be honest, I don't know. It's gonna be because of the relative positioning as the Earth goes around the sun and the moon tidally locked goes around the Earth. So at certain points, it's going to be behind, relatively speaking, or in front of, and that would determine the kind of eclipse that you're going to get. Celebriel 82 with the 15 says David Tennant was also good in Good Omens. He was fantastic in that. I loved Good Omens. That was a good show. A very long claw with the 5 who says some really great episodes would come from you watching Doctor Who. David is quite amazing. Oh, I know he's amazing, but Doctor Who is just a little cheesy for me. A little too much cheese. And being from Wisconsin, I know that sounds ridiculous. Adam Frost with the 17 New Zealand dollars? Is that what NC stands for? Hey, Kyle, your content is always great and high quality. Thank you. Facility and all the staff, we put a lot of resources into it, so I appreciate that. Wait until you see this week's episode. It's good. Hey, Kyle, do you have much exposure to how science works across countries? Do we do international science as well? Yes, of course we do. I don't mean to sound dismissive, but yes. So what's great about science is that if everyone follows the same protocol, same ways of thinking, anyone, anywhere can come to the same conclusion. And so there's collaborators across everything, everywhere. But when you'll really see it work really well when you have these giant experiments. So, for example, astronomers on other sides of the world trying to coordinate on the same thing or detect the same gravitational wave or what have you. Dozens of scientists across the globe working on single studies sometimes. So yes, international science is done. It's done all the time. It's been done forever. And the variability in who does the science is one of science's strengths. Even though they should all come to the same conclusion if they're doing the same science, different perspectives from different people, different ethnicities, different sexes, different genders, that if very different people can come to the same conclusion, it speaks to the strength of the science that's being done. Joseph Laro with the 5, and nothing to say. You see that? That's classy. And finally, Dr. Strange Jove, one of my very, very generous professors, says, with the 20, I'm just covering security's overtime. Yep, speaking of overtime, that is going to do it for office hours. Today, what did we talk about? Of course, we talked about the robot that can do science 1,000 times faster than any puny human. We talked about how fingertips can sense differences in surfaces down to the nanometer, which is crazy. We also talked about the law of large numbers and why, especially in America, it's very important to understand that we can't all get COVID. We must be better than this. Be better. Don't, like Kratos would say, don't be sorry. Be better, boy. That's hard on the voice. We also took one of your comments from the last episode at the facility. And finally, we are highlighting the work of one very talented creator who turned a trampoline and an Xbox Kinect into an N64 controller. Yeah, and we also took all of your comments and questions. Have a wonderful rest of your week. There's going to be a new episode at the facility very soon, but all of my staff members are going to see it a day early. If you want to join the staff, if you want to get videos a day early, you want to get access to a special super secret Discord with over like 700 people in it, if you want to give me episode ideas, if you actually want to chat with me, I know, almost 24/7, and give me episode ideas, and I can rate photos of your tarantulas, which I do, Phoenix. Then you can go to patreon.com/Kyle Hill, as I'm sure my security team is putting in the chat right now, and you can join us today. And before I say what I usually say, especially today, please, please be nice to each other. Because as tragedies prove, being nice, being considerate, being a human to other humans really does pay off in terms of your legacy. And it also highlights the fragility of today. Be nice to each other, because this is all we got. And we don't know when we're not going to have it anymore. Thanks for watching.